Hello again, and thanks for tuning into part 2 of the Woodlands photography. In this one, it's mainly focusing on one shoot in particular, and this is a grand tree that I absolutely love to photograph. I don't photograph it enough, and I need to walk around it more because I'm taking in awe just standing underneath it, looking up just the spread of the branches. So I actually need to, the next time I'm there, go and walk completely right round and look for different compositions for this one. But what this video is mainly going to be, I'm going to show you the shoot and how I went about it, and then it's going to be the edit. So if you like the editing side of the videos as well, location and edit, let me know in the comments below please, because that allows me to produce some variety in the videos as well. Hope you enjoy part 2 of Woodlands photography. This is my first composition of the morning, and it's this tree in front of me, and I've opted for a vertical composition. The tree's quite widely spread, but I've opted for a vertical composition to give it more impact in the image, hopefully, fingers crossed. What my settings are at the moment are f9 ISO 64, and it's working out at just around 4 seconds. That's at 3 seconds now. It's a vibrant green here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bracket this. There's not too many shadows, but I'm going to bracket it just to be on the safe side. So I'm going to menu, auto bracketing, and I'm just only going to go for 3 for this one. Back into menu, choose that, click OK. 2 seconds, OK. And my focus area, I've focused just under this branch just in front of me, and I'll show you in a second, but just focus on this branch under me. So I'm going to take the shot. I'll just check that one. And that is looking good. Even the foreground elements for that. For the crop of this one, I'm going to take it down just a tiny bit. I might even go to an 8x10, I'm not sure. I've shot this tree before, but I wanted to come back down to see, because the colours are beginning to change, I've noticed that, and I wanted to come back down and see how this would look. So what I'll do is I'll show you this from behind the camera. So hopefully you can see that and it's not too shaky. As you can see, my focus point is around this area here, and I have got branches coming out a lot closer, but I'm not too worried about them for this image, to be totally honest. There's the tree there, and you can see quite an impressive tree. If I come back here, and this is a wide shot as well, I might actually take one from this composition too. I actually did take it with a landscape orientation. As you can see, that's the tree there, but I actually did take it as a landscape orientation. But what I've done with it is I did a slight panel so that I could get in most of the branches. Okay, so here we have the bracketed panel, and it's made up of 9 images and it's 3 brackets each. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the full process of me putting this together, just in case you don't know how to do it, and then I'll take it into Photoshop and I'll edit it in there. So the first thing is I'm going to select all the images. Then I'm going to right click and I'm going to photo merge, and it's an HDR panorama, which means Lightroom will put the 3 HDR images together and then create a panorama out of it as well. So I'll just click HDR panorama. So as it's quite a large file, each of these are 45 megapixels each. It took a wee while to do that, but I've sped through that for you. So here's the first projection we have, and we have spherical. And as you can see, spherical doesn't work with this one. So let's try cylindrical, just to show you the differences when you are merging any panoramas together. And as you can see, that one definitely doesn't work. This one for me is perspective. Now, not all panoramas will work like this. When I did this panorama, I did not level the base, and that's the reason I have an image this kind of shape when it's all stitched them together. What you would normally do is you'd normally level the base to get these. But for this one, what I can do is I can push the boundary warp, or I can fill edges. I'll show you quickly what fill edges does. It's not the one I'm going to use though. The one I'm going to use is boundary warp. So there we have fill edges, and as you can see, what it does is it picks up other areas and does that to them. So we're not going to use that because it doesn't work for this one at all. Now, as I say, had I leveled the base, I would have a better perspective view in this, and it would have stitched it together a lot better. But in this case I didn't, because I was just really down shooting just to see compositions when I return, when the autumn colours are there. So I'm going to push the boundary warp, and I know for a fact I push it entirely to 100. So that's me. I'm quite happy with that. I'm going to click merge. I don't have auto settings on. That's what happens if I have auto settings on. And you can go in, you can leave that like that, and you can go in and adjust these later. It doesn't tie it to it, because if you remember, it is a raw image, so you've got total control over this. So I can leave it at raw with the auto settings off, or I can leave them on. For instance, I'll leave them on in this case just to show you, but I normally don't have them on. So I'll just click merge. Right, as you can see, that's it, it's been put together now. So what I'm going to do is just give you more screen space for this one, so that you can actually see the image as it is. And remember that we had auto settings turned on, which is here. So this is what Lightroom determined to be the best settings. As it's a raw file, we've got total control over these. So for example, if I want to bring the highlights back even further, I can, but I've got to watch with your highlights. If it's a bright sky, remember, if you take it too far, it will go to a yucky grey, colourless grey, and it doesn't work well with your images. Shadows, I'm going to tweak slightly, so I'm going to draw them back and then push them just to where I think they should be. Now I bet you that's not too much different from the auto settings, to be honest. Whites again, if I draw these back, look what happens to the colour in there, the whites in here. It just goes a horrible dull colour. So I'm going to, I can push it too far. I'm going to reset it to where Lightroom thought it was, and I thought it was about 18. For me, that's just a bit too much. So 9, so I've halved that. The blacks again, I tend to push everything so that I can see where I'm going to be happiest with it. And I'm actually going to lift the blacks slightly. I want depth in this, but I don't want too dark an area in it. I'm going to lift the shadows again, just ever so slightly. Dehaze for me, for this image, yes, I'm going to use. So I'm going to push that slightly. Again, I'm going to watch what's happening to the entire image. Push it too far, or up to 100, you get that effect, but I don't want it just as much as that. That seems to be about okay there. Next thing is the vibrance and the saturation, as you can see. So 9 times out of 10 what will happen is you'll pull the saturation back, and especially in images like this. So it's pulled the saturation back slightly and it's pushed the vibrance, which is looking for the other pixels that don't contain too much colour information, and push them slightly. So if I draw these back, I'll reset these to 0 just to let you see. So you may not have noticed too much of a difference in this, but if I drag the saturation back, it was at -1. There you go. And then it was +14 for the vibrance. So if I just zoom through the vibrance, you'll see what happens with the image. Now, it was vibrant when I took it, but not just as vibrant as that. Plus, I want an image that is quite pleasing to look at. So I am actually going to just take that to there, and I'm going to bring the saturation back about there. So that's me. The next thing I am going to do is I'm going to get into the detail, and you can see the sharpening default is set at 40. And if I hold down Alt on the keyboard, I'm on a PC, it'll be Option or Alt on the Mac, and I'm going to sharpen this. Now there's a lot of detail in this image, so I don't want to take it too far, just till it there. But that way, when you see it in white like that, that means everything's been sharpened. I don't want as much as that. I want to go perhaps around about there. And that looks okay for this. So what I'm going to do is I am going to take this into Photoshop, a couple of tweaks in Photoshop, bring it back in here, and then we will finish the edit. So the next thing is you're going to see this open in Photoshop. Before we drop into Photoshop, I actually use Luminar AI in my workflow as well. And there's a couple of edits that I nearly always do, but I understand that not everybody has Luminar AI. So I've just quickly dropped in here just to show you. One of the things that I do is Structure AI, and I'll just show you what this does. So we have it there at -1, and I push that slightly, and it's just to enhance the details and the structure throughout the image. Another one that I do is Enhance AI, which is hidden behind my face, as you can see it just now, but I'll turn it off and then turn it back on just to let you see the difference. So that's a couple of the edits that I use in Luminar AI, and small details as well. I'll just push them slightly. Not too much for this. And I think that's me done here. So the next time you see it, it'll be back in Photoshop. Okay, that's us in Photoshop now, and a couple of points I'd like to make out with this one is compositional elements. And for this is going to be cropped again, but I'll crop it back in Lightroom. I prefer Lightroom's cropping. And if you're wondering why I didn't crop it before I brought it in, it's so that I could show you this in here. So I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to take a brush, just a normal brush, and I'm going to make it red. I'll take a hard brush, take the size down, size is fine, and I'll make this red. Right, a couple of points I'd like to make out. This area here will be cropped out, and some of this I'll lose, and that is my mistake when taking this image. I should have moved round here further to shoot up in that direction, perhaps leading up there, and I'll do that the next time. The reason for that is balance. Look at this here. Nice sweep up. This here, if I had moved round, I could have taken this sweep here. Instead of it going down there, I could have swept it up there and still kept the tree. So what I would lose is all this area, and although it'd be a different shape in the landscape, it still would have filled the frame better. But to compensate for this, what I'm going to have to do, that tree coming in there as well I don't like either, that's edge of frame, but to compensate for this, I'm going to have to crop this down quite a bit so that it is more like that. Again, it's going to lose all of these. So you'll see that when we get into Lightroom. I'll continue with the edit just now for this. Right, as you see, we've got Luminar AI, and you can see the difference here. in the two images, especially with the vibrance of the two images. But what I want to do is I want to blend the two of these together. So basically what I'm going to do is I am just going to pull back the opacity of this one. Just slightly, just to about there, 62%. I'll just flick that on and off. You'll still notice a big difference, but I'm quite happy with that. If I wanted to bring back any vibrance in the tree, create a mask, and I make it black, go for the brush, soft brush, opacity, I'm going to take right down, 13, I won't do 11. It's not a superstition thing, but it just for some reason doesn't sit right well with me unless it's needed for the image. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring back some of the vibrance back in here, and I may do it right throughout. If you've watched any previous videos and you're wondering how this works with the tablet when you're doing this, it's a million times better with the tablet. I'm actually doing this with the mouse because my tablet is broken. I'm going to have to get a new one. So it's done me well, it's done me for years, but I'm going to have to get a new one now. So, and I actually prefer editing with a tablet than a mouse. It's more ergonomic than this, and I'm just been quite bold with these strokes. If I was editing with the tablet, I'd be zooming in and painting in there, but I'm just been quite bold with these at the moment. And what I'm doing is I'm actually looking for the areas with the most vibrance. You can see it there, and for the purposes of the video I'm going to lift this slightly and we'll do that. And what it's doing is, with this mask, it's allowing the underlying to show through and just basically provide depth in the image. And as I say, I'd normally take my time with this and do it with the tablet, but perhaps in a future video. So far I'm quite happy with that. The crop's not in it yet, but I can see what I'm going to do, or in fact I know what I'm going to do when I crop it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play around with this slightly, and I'm going to use the curves adjustments to dodge and burn this because it's such a big area, and to be honest, because I am using the mouse. So my next thing is create a curves layer, and I'm going to look for the darker tones. Right, the reason I'm doing this is mainly because of the leaves. So you'll see what's happening here. I'm then going to invert that. So I'll invert that, and I'll call that one dodge. I'll call that one burn, not dodge. And the next one I'll call dodge, and that'll be the lighter areas. And I'm going to use this to bring depth, hopefully bring depth back into the leaves. So another curves, and I'm just going to push that up the middle. Now there's many different ways to dodge and burn. As I say, I'm using this one because of my mouse. And this one I'm going to invert as well, and I'm going to call this one dodge, if it will let me type. This is quite a long edit, so if you want to hurry along to the end and just see the final result, please feel free to go for it. I just thought I would show you an entire edit from start to finish. So my next thing is, my brush is going to be set around the 20 mark. 18 will be fine, and I am going to change it to white, and again I'm going to be quite liberal. So I'm only painting where at the moment I can see the darker leaves, just the leaves that are in shadow, and that's the main areas that I'm going to be painting here. And it is basically just to bring back some of the depth to these leaves because of the tonal values in them. And I'm going to paint in there. And as I say, it's mainly for the leaves, but I'm going to look at the actual tree itself in a second. But I'm just being quite liberal with this, just so that you get the idea of how the actual image was edited. And that there, you can see I haven't put a black and white one on this like I showed in the previous videos. I haven't put a black and white on this one, simply because of the contrast that was there in the sky, and I could see what was going on with the actual tree itself. So that's the reason I didn't put a black and white in here. And it's basically, it's like everything else. You use anything that you know will get you the effect at the end that you are seeking from your image. That's the main thing about these edits. And we'll just go in there, but hopefully you can see, if I flick that on and off, hopefully you'll see the difference. So we're creating some depth in here. I'm just aware of your time, and if you've still stuck with me by now, you're doing well. Right, I'll go in and I'll make it quick for the last wee bits. The dodging, again, I'm actually going to take the opacity down because I don't want this to over dodge. So let's just take it to around 10. And I'll just be very quick in here. So we'll go in here, again very liberally, and you'll see that I'm picking up the areas that are lightest. Yes, it will be because of the size of the brush. Yes, it will be picking up other areas, but hopefully you get the idea with it. So I'll leave it at that just now, and then I am going to go in and paint down some of the tree to bring back some of that depth in there. I'm aware that that area there, that won't be painted because the last time I painted that, it stood right out. So I'm only catching the small areas in this. And that area there won't be touched either. It's bright enough, as you see. So fingers crossed you are getting something from this video. And I know you're sitting watching somebody editing, but for me, I find these types of videos really useful, because even if it's only one part you take away from it, it's you picking something up, and that's the main thing, because you learn as much as you can, and you've probably forgotten half the things that you've ever learned, and it's through necessity. The ones you need to remember are the ones that you'll keep and that you'll use on a normal basis. Right, I won't rattle on here. What I'll do is I'll take this straight back into Lightroom and I'll show you the edit and the final tweaks. That's us back in Lightroom. Final minute or so and I'll show you what's going to happen with this. Right, the first thing I will do is I will talk about the cropping. As I mentioned here, I need to lose some of this here so that I can balance it out here. So I'll bring that in and I'll bring that up. So as you can see, I'm losing quite a bit of the tree, and that is my mistake. And I'm losing these areas down here, and what I tend to do is, if I look up here, I can see what's happening. So I can take that in a bit further. Instead of looking at the bigger picture, look at the smaller picture. It gives you a better idea. Now I could edit this in Photoshop and I could warp it up slightly so that it fills the frame, but I don't want to do that. I want to keep this one as natural as possible. I am looking at any lines there, any branches that are leading off and how they're going to balance. But as you can see, the image is my mistake. So I'm going to leave it at that for the crop. We have too much of a curve here. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to take that back out to around there and do that. So there we've got that curve bringing you back in. I keep looking here and then checking down here. Final wee touches to this. I'll get into the basic, because this one wasn't opened in Lightroom as a smart object. It was just the way the edit's been done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that back so that you can see the bigger picture, and I'm going to zoom out, and I'm just going to check it very quickly for a balance, and I've got this set to white because it lets me see the balance better. Right, so the highlights I'm going to bring back. The shadows I'm going to lift. Whites, very, very slightly. Blacks I'm okay with. Dehaze, slightly. Vibrance, I'm actually going to lift it back again. And saturation I'm going to pull back again slightly. Now there's so much more you could do with this image, but I just wanted to show you this. And let's centre that. So that's us nearly done. Now I need to highlight certain areas in this, and I've got brushes created in Lightroom for this. I've got the burn and the darken, and that's the usual brushes, but I have brushes here that I've created myself, and if you check back a few videos, I'll put it up that side. If you check back there, it shows you how to create brushes in Lightroom, and it explains how they all work as well. So the one that I'm going to use for this is Emphasize Rock, and you'll notice that if I paint on here, there is a slight difference. If I push that, I bring it back, can you see the slight difference in that area there? Right, I'm going to reset that. That's the one that I will use to highlight any of the branches. Now again, as I said, I'm having to do this with a mouse. And believe me, once you use a tablet, if you don't already use one, you will notice so much of a difference using a tablet when it comes to editing. For me, as I say, I'm just going through this very, very quickly. And I'm just going to make that a wee bit bigger there, bring that down there, take that up there, but not too much on that. We've got lovely lines coming down the tree. The texture in this tree is phenomenal. And just the time of day that I chose to go down and shoot this, I knew that the sun would be around this area and behind it, so it allowed the light to fall over all these undulations here in the moss. So I've got to be careful now that I don't overpaint this and create too much emphasis on certain areas that you don't want it to be. And to be honest, as I say, I'm just talking here for the sake of talking, but as I'm doing this, do you know, I think I'm going to take my tablet to bits and see if I can sort it myself, because I don't know how much longer I can last using the mouse. And we will call it done at that. There's a couple of areas. I know that when I first edited this image there was a lot of areas, and it was before the tablet was still working, and there was a lot of areas that I worked through with this and took my time. And that's the thing that you should be doing as well, is taking your time with it. Probably not as long as this video was taken though. And again, if you've lasted this long, thank you very much. Right, I'm going to zoom out, and I'm going to add my last touch to this, and then that's the editing side of this done. So that's me used that brush. The next thing I'm going to use is the Vignette. Now, I don't like the Vignette that's in Lightroom, so I created one for this. So here we go, and it's within the radial filters, and right now it's inverted. So if I go over this, you will see where the Vignette is affecting that image. So anywhere in red has been affected by that. So if I do an extreme, you'll see how dark it gets there. I'm looking just to see that it's there, but not just as noticeable. And we'll call it okay at that. I'm going to put one more edit in, and again a radial filter, and this time exposure, which is here, and I'm just going to put that there, just to help draw you in even further to that area. And it's going to be a very, very subtle exposure. So I'm going to take the feather a bit more and just do that. So it's 0.45, and I'll do this, and then I'll go full screen for you. Click that to there, and that's the final edit. So if you've survived the entire editing process for this, thank you very much. I really appreciate you sticking to the end of that. A couple of wee things at the end, and then that's us. So that was the entire edit for this one. I actually did 2 edits. I took it down a more fantasy type edit as well, which I'll put on screen now. And with that one, I played around with more of the colours and the lighting, the backlighting from the sky. I played around with that to get that final effect. If you'd like to see how that one was created as well, let me know in the comments and I'll create a quick editing tutorial for that one as well. It's handy to learn all the different techniques because then you can decide when to use them and when not. Currently, I'm preferring my more natural edits. I know 2 videos back there for the roadside photography challenge. I just added a preset for that. That was just a bare naked preset dropped onto every image. Tweaked slightly, but just dropped onto every image. And I enjoyed doing that as well. I think it's great to experiment with different things. Hopefully you enjoyed watching the process of that from start to finish. So thanks again for watching and I'll see you in the next video.